What would it be like to live in a world of standing up for yourself? For example, what if individuals stood up to private corporations? They're not even private in a sense that we are led to believe, but still. What if people ignored the argument by a private corporation that it's a private corporation and therefore it can make whatever rules it wants for the people who engage in business with it? What if the individuals standing up for themselves simply treated the concept of private property not as some noble ideal that takes precedence over their own selves, but as an enemy trick that should be ignored? Like if Amazon banned someone's self-published book, this person then said, I don't care that you are a private company and have the right to do that. You just made yourself my enemy. Prepare for guerrilla warfare terrorism. I don't care about your rights. So this person treats the claim of private property as nothing more than an enemy mind trick and completely ignores it. Because the person loves their own selves so much, loves their own selves more than they love civilization, that the person reasons, what benefit is it to me to respect the rights of this corporation? If I respect their rights and obey their rules, they'll be billionaires and I'll be a loser. I decided to love myself more than I love their rights. So I'm going to destroy them, or I'm going to take over their stuff. What's really strange is there isn't any guerrilla warfare going on against the New World Order right now. So much so that the NWO has to fake synagogue shootings, school shootings, cops being killed, and other bullshit like that, in order to make it seem as if all of that is happening. What's strange about it is they shouldn't have to fake any of that. If people adapted the attitude of standing up for themselves. Like, let's assume if Wings of Redemption is not an actor, but he is for real, and one day he gets banned off of Twitch for some kind of a community guidelines violation. Why wouldn't the most logical thing for him to do would be to try and do something violent against the company in revenge? And to arrogantly state to the world, I don't give a shit about your private property rights. Let's see, I asked my shotgun if it gives a shit about your private property, and my shotgun told me that it doesn't give a shit. Well, there you go. What are you gonna do? That's too bad. And imagine if the average people cheered on that kind of attitude. Imagine you became that type of person with that kind of attitude. That's called living a life where you are standing up for yourself, so you don't end up a loser. This is why forensic science and security cameras should piss you off. Don't you wish you lived in a world where security was like in the 1800s? Where you could just drive into a company parking lot, blow away a random employee with gunfire in revenge, and drive away without being caught, and this kind of thing just repeated in America 100 times a night every day. And everyone whose toes are stepped on by the NWO corporations will go out and commit terrorist acts against those corporations. This way Wings of Redemption could show up on Twitch, make himself at home, stream all kinds of racist and sexual shit, and there's nothing they could do against him because they would be afraid to die. Another example, in this school shooting news story, where the shooting is likely a hoax, the NWO police force is playing out a charade of instilling fear and compliance in little children. But what if the children weren't compliant? What if they stood up for themselves? What if they all put their hands down and simply scattered and went running in every direction and then went home and played video games and told the school and the cops to go fuck themselves? They would be living their lives where they are standing up for themselves. And don't permit the enemy to trick them with righteous ideals. What if the school is on lockdown and the teacher insists that the kids stay in the classroom? How many students could defy the teacher with a violent assault on her? And I don't just mean shoving her out of the way, but dropping her on the ground and then sadistically stomping on her throat in rage, in hopes of breaking the spine or crushing the larynx so she suffocates. Like, what if your school teacher was an old fat woman like this? Who could kill her by stomping on her neck while she's down on the ground, and then be able to sleep peacefully at night afterward? All because she got in the way, and you didn't want to obey the school rules that she enforces. That's living life as a person who stands up for themselves, stands up to the bullies. How many people would be able to live with having done something like that to one of their teachers? Such a cold-blooded murder, done in psychopathic rage. I'm starting to write my James Grider novels in such a way that there is no real plot anymore. It's like he just goes from one situation to the next, where he engages in psychopathic behavior against authority figures, even authority figures that society considers nice. He uses an intrusive cosmic entity to get away with killing, which is kind of sad because anyone who reads the book will feel sad and impotent that in real life such powers don't exist, so they could do the same in real life. But what I intend to write is not that James simply kills the authorities. Oh, he does that too plenty of times. But no, simply killing them is not fun. He also plays out a very sick and twisted form of psychological warfare in as many killings as possible. For example, he might not just kill a cop, but he might overpower and incapacitate the cop before he kills the man. And before he kills the man, he will tell him that he is going to kill his wife and children next, in the same vicious and slow manner with which he is killing him. So the cop doesn't just die, but he dies believing that his family is going to suffer next, and he failed them, and that now he is dying and he won't be able to protect them. Imagine dying with that on your mind. This is the kind of psychological torture James Grider wants to inflict. James Grider might kidnap one of the police officers who locked down a school somewhere for a fake school shooting incident. But not only that, he'll kidnap one of the 10-year-old kids that are seen in the newspaper photo who had to stand with his hands up. Then he'll lecture that kid to not be a bitch, and will put a gun in his hands, and will force the kid to pull a trigger, killing the incapacitated cop. And of course the kid will not want to do it. He'll be hysterical. He'll resist. He doesn't want to perform such an evil. But James Grider will make him do it, thus forcing that kid to live the rest of his life with such a memory, with a memory of having been kidnapped at 10 years old, of having had his kidnapper put a gun in his hand, and then shooting dead a tied-up police officer. And James basically tells the kid that if you are too pussy to rebel like this, where you kill cops of your own volition like I do, I'm gonna artificially make you into a rebel, where you will kill a cop despite how immoral you believe it to be. Because if you don't, then I'll kill your parents. This forces a 10-year-old child to shoot a man dead, and then he must live with the nightmare memory and the guilt for the rest of his life. See, it would be fun to depict James Grider staging such scenarios. And this is a book character you're supposed to root for, that you're supposed to be concerned for if he's in peril. Someone who would cut the throat of a kindly old school teacher and not feel any kind of remorse. What would it be like to live in a world of standing up for yourself, where you put yourself ahead of civilization, where you could tell companies like YouTube, I don't care about your private property rights. But of course you'd still advocate your own rights. I don't know what other sick, twisted shit I can think up for James Grider to do in the books. It has to be stuff that's more like, psychological warfare. Whether it's physically gruesome or not does not matter. It has to be something psychologically twisted. Like murdering a judge and then framing the parent of the child for the killing that the judge locked up in jail or something. Why? Well, because in a rational world, it shouldn't be just James rebelling like that. It should be the parent, too. And if the parent was too pussy to do it, too pussy to conceive doing such a thing, then James should make it look as if the parent did it. Since regular people are not going to rebel, James has to make it look as if they are rebelling. Like forcing regular people under gunpoint to call in terroristic threats to FBI offices, then running away and leaving those people to deal with the trouble of it, where the FBI shows up to arrest them, but it wasn't their fault. And of course the government, while hunting after James, starts framing James for crimes that he didn't commit, even though there's thousands of serious crimes that he did commit. Like, they might MK Ultra some kid who resembles him to shoot up some school somewhere, and then have the Masonic news media claim that James did it. These are interesting ideas. In the coming war for freedom, could you murder your school teacher and not have it bother your conscience? Could you murder your school bus driver and not have it bother your conscience? Or your boss at work? James Grider is so crazy in the book that where, let's say, some bad guys chase him into some office building, and the adrenaline rush makes him agitated, and James sees an American flag standing in some office, he'll light the flag on fire in rage and then keep running, which ends up damaging the office by fire. Like, there's no logical reason to do something like that, yet he'll stop and do it in a berserk rage, and doesn't care who he harms. I want to write that he throws his dad's war medals into a river in utter disrespect, and actually films it on video and puts it on the internet. It's just such a fun stuff. And do you think it would be fair if instead of killing politicians themselves, James Grider would pick one politician to torment and then cast death upon every family member that that man possesses, including his innocent children and all his friends, while leaving the man alive in order to inflict the worst emotional torment possible on the guy? Of course, these high-ranking Freemasons, they're such sociopaths. They might not care too much about their own families, so I don't know if that'll be too effective. That creature that James Grider has with him can mimic anyone's voice. So he has that creature sneak into the homes of police officers at night, turn on their cell phones, and make death threat calls to their bosses, and their bosses hear the voice and think that it's the actual officer himself making the call. You can imagine the chaos that results just from that. Of course, without intrusive cosmic entities, it's impossible for a regular person to do that kind of thing, which should leave the readers of the novel frustrated and say, holy fuck, not only do we not have intrusive cosmic entities in real life that I can use to fuck with people, but the government is trying to take away our guns too, so we're totally helpless and don't even have conventional weapons, and are at the complete mercy of the tyrants.